And now, with that, I'd like to introduce the next panel, which is all about how to invest in Lightning open source development Bitcoin companies. Is that fair to say? I'm making a real hash of it right now. It's a good thing you guys are going to come and talk about it. Can I welcome onto the stage the next panel? Come on down. Can you get a round of applause, please?
Hey. The most toxic Bitcoiner is Shinobi. He's just not in here right now.
Good evening. What is the title of our panel? Investing in Lightning Network Companies. I'm Chris Hunter, co-founder of Galloy, CEO of the Bitcoin Beach Wallet, and we have two of the best early stage investors in the world here, so should be a good chat. Before we get into the Bitcoin stuff, you are also both two of the most interesting, dynamic, and dare I say, unconventional people I've met in the industry. And so why don't you tell people briefly about your pre-coiner life and how you came to Bitcoin as an industry?
Pre-coiner. Well, gold and silver was great, so Bitcoin was pretty natural. And I'm in that late 2012, 2013 era. I have a valid Mt. Gox claim. Does anyone else have a valid Mt. Gox claim? No? A couple? We'll see what happens with that. But yeah, that's how I discovered it, and I had a bar in New York City. We had the second Bitcoin ATM and just fell into it.
Yeah, I read about Bitcoin in 2011 when I was a university student, thought it was really cool. Never thought in a million years it would be allowed to work, did not buy any, hence why I raised outside fund. And then I became very obsessed in 2012 when I graduated with energy, and I moved down after doing a few startups to help start a company called Bright, which is like Sunrun from Mexico, so now the largest residential solar company in Mexico. And that was one of my big aha moments, was understanding that Bitcoin is energy-backed money. And while I was living in Mexico, seeing the need for the payment system and got really interested there. And then outside of that, I know Muzz has some music background here as well. I also rap, so that's my other hobby.
If you're lucky, they'll both perform and draw an analogy between publishing music and backing music artists and Bitcoin VC industry.
Maybe tonight.
Side note, we did just listen to Max's rap outside right before this. And wait,
All
what
right.
is the chorus? It's
Give a holla, drop the dollar. Yeah, we take Bitcoin.
give a holla, drop
Let's
a
go.
dollar, yo, we take Bitcoin.
That's right. That's right.
So just to give everybody here an orientation, maybe you can tell them when you started your firm, how much money do you have, what do you look to invest in? I mean, we all know Muzz has no money, just pretends to, but that's a different conversation. No, seriously.
Wow, I love it.
Yeah, so I, before starting HiveMind Ventures, which is my fund, hivemind.vc, I was working in a different fund, Version 1 Ventures, where we invested more of a traditional Silicon Valley fund in all kinds of things, energy, climate, and then a lot of crypto and Web3. And while I was there, it was an incredible opportunity. Done a lot of the big names in crypto and Ethereum, and it was interesting to me. But I kept asking like a single question to all of the founders, which is like, who here runs a full node? And you know how many answers I got after like literally a year and a half of doing this? Goose egg. And that's when I started feeling like Michael Burry in The Big Short, and I was like, it seems like something's not right here. And I had started to realize that Lightning could potentially scale Bitcoin. You could build a lot of stuff on top of that. And so yeah, so I left and decided to start my own fund about a year ago. HiveMind Ventures Fund 1 is a $21 million seed and pre-seed fund. Typically write checks between $250K and $1 million. I love being absolute first money in. I will do some seed deals, but I love finding founders. And there's a lot of you out in the crowd today. In fact, I think a lot of the conference is in the Hive. Actually, if you're in the HiveMind portfolio, you want to raise your hand? All right, let's go. Let's go. We got a bunch of people out there. So anyway, yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Cool. So my company is Lightning Ventures, and we are a misfit band of people who invest in Bitcoin companies. That's all we're focused on is Bitcoin companies. So I did a lot of angel investing previously, and there's a million things to learn about that. And then just started focusing on Bitcoin-only companies. And we do something a little bit different. We raised a fund to a very small fund. Chris is right. We don't have any money. He's not wrong about that. But just a friends and family small fund. And then we are focusing on building up a syndicate, which is a group of awesome, accomplished talented people who are really only interested in investing in Bitcoin companies, like Chris, or founders of companies, engineers, marketing whizzes, everyone, right? We want as many awesome people in that group as possible. So when we invest in a company, we also try to secure some allocation for the syndicate, for the people in the Lightning Ventures fold, right? So I'm a big advocate of getting started, right? Getting out there and starting to write your first checks and support these companies and just do as much as you can and support them along the way. So I'm really focused on that syndicate side of things. I hope that we raise a second fund. We intend to. And maybe that'll be like a real fund where we won't be totally broke. But right now, that's pretty much just what we're focused on.
It's despite the fact that he has no money, Muzz is such a gem of a human being. He's buying everybody beer this evening, so don't miss out on that.
Also, this dude is value add. I see him. He really hustles for his company. So for real.
So speaking of money, let's talk about Lightning. And when people think about Lightning, they tend to really focus on payments as a use case. And so talk about what investments you've made recently and what you're focused on in the near future. Is it exclusively payments? Is it majority payments? Are you focused on other use cases? Why don't you give a little color there?
Yeah. So at a high level, my thesis is that the Bitcoin story has already played out once before, and that's more or less, and that's the story of the internet, right? And so in the same way that you have a vertical stack of protocols, TCP, IP, all the way up to HTTP, SMTP, et cetera, that's what's happening here. And so Bitcoin is like that base layer, right, for value settlement. It's something akin to Fedwire, which your co-founder Nicholas really turned me on to in 2020 from Galoy. And so then on top of that, once you have the payment network, once you have something like the HTTP for Lightning, or sorry, for Bitcoin, whoa, I'm excited too, I know, yeah. Fuck yeah, Lightning. Now all of a sudden the Bitcoin becomes usable, because Bitcoin is obviously interesting as a store of value and a savings asset, but once you can take micropayments and move them globally, interoperably on the web, that's when things get crazy. And so my thesis is that in the future, in the decade, right, the largest companies in consumer internet, fintech, and energy are all going to be Bitcoin companies. And they all have to plug directly into the Bitcoin. And I think it's probably going to be Lightning, but let's say scaling solutions on top of that. And so when I think about investing, I have a couple of different buckets, right? And so I think, think about it as infrastructure, payments, and new apps. Infrastructure, I love to do this. This is stuff like liquidity marketplaces, things like Lightning Network Plus. If you guys have seen Bolt Observer, they do monitoring and a lot of really interesting stuff to help node runners. I'm also personally an investor in Umbrel, which is fucking badass. If you guys have an Umbrel, who here has an Umbrel? Yeah, that company is so dope. And so anyways, so I do a lot of this infrastructure stuff, Lightspark, which is David Marcus's recent startup. And so they're all focused on, and there's other great companies, which I'm not an investor in, like Voltage and others that I love, but that help you get the network up and running and help node runners run that, right? And then from there, then I think about the sort of payments application. And in payments, I think of it as a spectrum. There's going to be centralized providers, right? And so in different geographies, I think different countries are going to regulate differently. So you're going to have different winners in different geographies. So in that sense, I've invested in various companies. I know we have some in the audience. I've invested a couple recently in Southeast Asia. We have Pouch in the Philippines, Neutron Pay in Southeast Asia. Yeah, let's fucking go. Neutron Pay focused on Vietnam. Here in Latin America, I have IX Mercado. We have BitNob in Africa right now. A couple others I don't know if we've announced yet, but in various parts of the world. And then I think about, on the other end, you have companies that are focused completely on decentralized, not just payments, but plugging in the Lightning Network. Those would be companies like Breeze. And then in the middle, you have companies like Galoy and Fedi, which I'm also invested in. And those companies, kind of have this middle model where you do have trust, but that trust is perhaps in a community instead of some like random Wells Fargo that you don't know. So those are kind of the payments that I think about. But what I'm most excited about is what comes next, right? So in my mind, payments and infrastructure, exciting, big businesses, lots of unicorns to be built there. But that's like obvious, that's table stakes. What I'm excited about is what comes next. Like in the same way, even though we all know he's like a little silly at Andreessen Horowitz, but Chris Dixon always talks about putting the New York Times online, the skeuomorphic thing was cool, but it was Twitter that was the real breakthrough, right? And so when you have value on the internet, micropayments that are global, what are the new constructs and applications that we can build? And I think no one knows. I have this new obsession now, which I'm sure we'll talk more about, but this is this idea. I put out a paper recently, you can find it on my Twitter handle or whatever, called How to Disrupt Google. And the idea is for the first time in human history, we can associate value with information. That's a brand new construct. And I think now we can do things like market rank, which I think will be better than value rank, to surface information. And so some of the applications I'm looking at, you know, I'm an investor in Stacker News, absolutely love those guys. That's one knowledge marketplace and a way to surface information. A couple that will be announced soon. Geyser, which I believe is in the crowd. These guys are doing some incredibly cool stuff with crowdfunding. Yeah, fuck yeah. And so this new wave of what comes next, the application wave, that's what I'm excited about now.
All right, we're already 2 F-bombs into the conversation. Do a shot every time Max drops one.
All right.
Mike, payments or more than payments in terms of what you invest in?
I love payment stuff. I mean, I'm definitely a payments guy. Those are great deals. They're very scalable and they're easy to understand, you know. And I like to try to invest in companies that aren't affected by the Bitcoin price, right? So with the exception, you know, outside mining, price goes up, price goes down. People are spinning their fold wheel. They're getting their sats back for shopping. They're getting rewards and spending. So it doesn't really matter what the price is doing. In fact, some of our companies are having like record months, right, with an otherwise not great market. The companies that we've invested in, even whether it's the fund or our syndicate, we're all over the world. So, but a lot of them are the same type of beloved companies, right? Like a Swan Bitcoin here in the U.S. You know, Amber in Australia was actually the first, right? So that's a very similar product. Or maybe in Europe, you know, there's Bitstack. Okay, that was Y Combinator's probably only Bitcoin only company, maybe ever. They were in the most recent batch, right? And it's all these other things, right? It's the payroll linking, the direct deposit, the debit card solutions, right? Everyone is toying with lending one day once the dust all settles from everything that's going on now. But there's a lot of other interesting companies too that are really outside. We were chatting a little bit earlier, like, you know, before you just basically invested in exchanges. You know, a lot of it was just an exchange in this part of the world, right? But now you have things like Crowd Health, right? Crowd Health is reinventing healthcare and also allowing you to stack sats that's in a segregated Swan account, and it's 1,000 times better than insurance and other things, right? That's a healthcare company that's adding a Bitcoin component, right? They're becoming a Bitcoin company, all right? And it's vastly different than something that is, you know, really an infrastructure product, you know. But we've invested in Bitcoin Beach Wallet, you know, the world's largest community bank, you know, born here in El Salvador. Did you guys hear what I said? World's largest community bank?
Yeah.
Okay, that is a
Fuck
bank,
yeah.
okay?
Open for new investment right now. See Mike. See Mike.
But there's so many other cool things, right? We invested in Digital. They're a sponsor here. That's like the biggest TAM of any company, period. All right, and they're reinventing how founders can raise capital, how investors can invest and participate in deals. There's just so much interesting stuff being built, right? Whether it's messaging or the self-sovereign stuff like the Umbrals or Start9, who's out there, which is a company that we've invested in multiple times. These are like, there's just such a nice variety. There's so much more of a robust space than just like, oh, it's an exchange in the, you know, the UAE. But there's just so much cool stuff. I mean, he mentioned Stacker News. You know, there's Fountain for podcasting. There's all these fun things that are out there, right? There's Thunder Games. You know, Des is here if you talk to her. I mean, that's, you know, it's not life-changing money, but depending on where you live in the world, playing a game and earning sats, right? Or getting sats back for every ad you see on the internet, right? A company called Slice. All right, just turn it on, and all of a sudden you're getting paid for your eyeballs, right? No need to get a Brave browser or some nonsense token, right? There's just so much going on. It's like such an exciting time to be following it.
Question for the audience: do you feel that these guys are enthusiastic about what they do? So to call for what it is, you're both white boys from America. You kind of both touched, kind of half answered my next question, which was going to be related to jurisdiction and do you invest outside of the U.S.? Clearly you do, so maybe we'll extend that one step further, and for the benefit of any founders or prospective founders in the room, we can talk a little bit about mechanics of getting deals done. So do you always, you're typically the first money into a company or very early money, do you always do an investment under a safe? Do you ever do convertible notes? Do you ever do price rounds as a first round? And then also, for companies outside of the U.S., are you doing it through a U.S. C Corp above that, or just talk a little bit about mechanics of deals? Maybe Mike, we'll start with you.
Well, Max is mad early, okay? That is the reputation and that is the truth. Max is like dangerously early. When you're tight with cool things like, Bolt Fun or Pleb Lab or the people who are getting, builders and people together in rooms, you can be super early. Most everything is a safe, right? There's a lot of safe notes in the beginning. Not too many price rounds, to be honest with you. That's all boring stuff. What was the question? That's
the second part.
The fuck was the question?
For a company in Africa or Latin America, would you ever just do a direct investment into a legal entity there? Do you have to do it through a Delaware C Corp? How are you doing that?
So the C Corp is the gold standard, right? I talked a little bit about this earlier in the workshop. I mean, that's really where it is. There are other equivalents all over the world. Some funds are not allowed to invest in them, right? But the Delaware C is the way to go. Just avoid an LLC. We just specifically don't invest in them, period. They pretty much always have to be converted, and you can't issue equity and all these kind of problems down the road.
Yeah, I mean, I echo most of what Muzz says. Well, when I do invest, I typically do early, but I do some later stage stuff as well. When I go early, I typically just use a standard YC safe. There are some interesting terms out there that I do encourage founders to understand. So typically I'll do a standard YC safe, encourage Delaware C Corp. We'll do typically a one-page side letter with pro rata and information rights, and that's typically what I do. Now, there is actually an interesting term which I would suggest founders sort of educate themselves on. Something I've been doing more and more with some of my founders is understanding there's like a way that safes convert if you stack them, and there's some terms there that we explore. But beyond that, I just like to keep it cookie cutter because we're trying to reinvent the monetary and information system. We don't need to reinvent companies. I do strongly advise all founders just to do a Delaware C Corp. Again, in my experience, you don't want to give an investor a reason to say no, right? As an investor, you have so much on your plate, so much you're seeing all the time. And if it's just going to be extra hassle or diligence because it's in a tax haven country, I've seen many deals that are great, and it's just a pain. Now, there are exceptions, and you will see YC typically does their Latin American companies. I'll have to check, but I think it's Cayman. And so in those cases, if there's a clear set path that I've seen YC do before, I'm happy to do that. But again, that's not my specialty. When I do later rounds, I've done some later rounds like Lightning Labs or River, companies like that, then we typically do price rounds, and I'm fine with that too.
Cool. So let's make the conversation a little more provocative. So I know both of these guys well. Full disclosure, they've both invested in my companies. I'm a limited partner in both of their funds. So you could dare call it a bit of an incestuous relationship. But in all seriousness, you mentioned a specific company, Stacker News. Mike, you highlighted that Max likes to be, mad early, I think was your turn of phrase. Stacker News is, I know that a company Max was super excited about and thought was undervalued at the very same time for the very same deal at the very same stage. Mike thought it had a crazy overvaluation. So why don't you talk about that specific example and how you saw it and why you guys saw it differently? Sure.
So I'm just curious, show of hands, who here has used or seen Stacker News before? Let's go. Let's fucking go. Stacker.news. Check it out.
3 F-bombs, if you're keeping sure. 3.
Well, technically 4. I threw one while you were all talking. So this is absolutely one of my favorite companies out there of all time. It's like Reddit, but they pay you Bitcoin. I think it's the highest signal forum on the internet today, especially if you're getting your Bitcoin Lightning news. Now, I've invested here twice. I led Keon's pre-seed round and his seed round. The pre-seed round, I think we both agree, was pretty reasonable valuation. The seed round, I still thought was a great valuation. And I'll tell you why. So my approach to venture capital, every investor has their own approach. And there's no one right or wrong way to do this. Everyone has their own flavor, right? So I am, to be very clear, playing much more, the way I look at it, of like a traditional Silicon Valley model. In that, you know, in my fund, I'm going to have, let's call it something like 30 bets, 30 companies that I'm supporting and partnering with. And of those, I assume that a decent number of those are going to go to zero. And that's part of the assumption. But I also assume that if I'm betting on the right founders, people that have truly visionary ideas, people that ship, that's also very important to me, constantly. And they're exploring an idea that matches my thesis and the market for that is massive, I'm cool with that. Because I am positive that we're going to mint many multi-billion-dollar companies or multi-whatever that's going to be in Satoshi's one day, for sure. And so I'm okay taking those wilder swings because that's my model, and also that's just more of my personality. I love swinging for the fences. I want the moonshots. When I invested in Stacker News, I got very excited for 2 reasons. Well, first, as a user. This is something else also out there. Like, I do deals that come to me, but one of my secrets, I guess, is a lot of my companies, I don't wait. I reach out to them, or I've been using their product first, so I know what I like. Stacker News, I was a user way before I invested in the early days, right? I love that site. I saw it growing organically, and I said, who is this dude that just keeps shipping like a madman, right? When I got the opportunity to invest, of course, I pulled the trigger immediately. Then I worked closely with him for 6 or 7 months, and I said, oh my God, one dude is shipping all of this? Like, this is a savant. And so I was already sold on him as a person, right? And that's the most important thing. Anyone that tells you differently, like whatever, it's founder. At the early stage, always founder, right? Founder in the right market. And then I start thinking about the market, right? And I think the market is going to be so big for this. Like, you look, I mean, obviously I'm sort of an internet nerd here. I love using Reddit. I love using Quora, or I used to before it was like pretty shitty, Twitter, et cetera, et cetera. And what are these things? Well, they're all information marketplaces. That's what I see them as. And they all have multi-billion-dollar valuations, right? Reddit, I think recently, well, I mean, they went private and then got reacquired, you know, but we're talking multi-billion-dollar valuation. Same with Stack Overflow, same with Quora. And that's because information and surfacing information is extremely valuable, right? And also having the eyeballs that, you know, then have jobs and other services on there. And so a big part of my thesis that I was telling you guys about is that I believe Google search is vulnerable. And I think that as we see people looking to surface and search for better information, value rank or market rank is the key that they're missing. And in order for me to pick that next Google, I have no idea who it's going to be. But one of my sort of visions that I could see coming true is an information marketplace, right? That instead of having upvotes, because one of the questions is, well, how do I convert an upvote on Reddit from 2012 to a like on Twitter in 2022, different users? It's almost as if you have to adjust for different currencies. Well, what if there was one interoperable currency of the internet that you could associate with information, right? Satoshis. And so for me, I see this as an opportunity to build a knowledge marketplace with an exceptional founder in, in just an area that I love, and just a product that I love. I use it every fucking day, right? So anyways, I'm a big fan, and that's my thing.
So Mike, for Stacker News, was it solely valuation, or as an investment professional, was there something else in your analysis that said, I need to pass on this?
I love Stacker News too. I used it then. I still use it now, right? It's great. And I love Keon. I love all that stuff. It's just, I'm okay with being old man yells at Bitcoin valuation, right? Which seems to be kind of the funny way that's going. But I come from the real world, okay? So like, you know, in the real world, you get sent a deal or an opportunity, and you know, maybe whatever the valuation is, right? We're just talking in a range here. Whatever the valuation is, there's like maybe 900K ARR, and that's up 5x from the year previously, and there's like 3 or 4 quality VCs that have already invested, and maybe they were fresh out of an accelerator, right? That's the real world. I'm like, okay, a 20x multiple, you know, SaaS companies, even things that might be a little expensive, okay? So I'm used to seeing that, and then when you come into Bitcoin VC land, it is, woo boy, it is, hey, we have a couple 100,000 page views a month and hundreds of dollars in revenue. We're issuing a safe note at $30 million. Who's in? Anybody? No, that's crazy, okay? So if you are maybe 5x MIT people that are going out to do a biotech thing or something, all right, or you know, certain types of companies, but with what we're talking about, like, I find that a little crazy, and you can only stretch so far. So you know, there's a thing in VC that's basically return the fund is what it's called. Max is slugging. Okay, he's slugging. So don't take offense if Max doesn't invest in your company because maybe it's just not a good fit for VC. Every investment he makes has to have the possibility to return the entire fund of everyone's money with a multiple, okay? The base hits, the doubles, that's not what he's playing for, right? And not every company has the ability to do that. That doesn't mean they're not a good company, they're just not suited for all different sort of venture investing, right? So his point is Stacker News at whatever price, it doesn't matter to him because it's such a big market, it's such a big multiple that if it works, it's just gonna be freaking huge, you know? So that's kind of where he's coming from.
Cool. Hopefully you got a sense of how they approach things, the same
I
deal.
love Stacker News, dog.
Muzz is just a boomer who brings a growth equity approach to early stage investing. Let's just call it for what it is. We're going to open it up to audience questions, so noodle on those. But one more question before we do. You know, it's nice to think that we all go through life with no regrets, but let's be honest, we all have a few. Maybe you've got a tattoo or something else. But Muzz, we'll come to you first. Name a deal that you've seen in your current seat where you either invested in it and you regret it, or you missed it and you regret it. You don't necessarily need to name names, but for the audience, take away the insight in terms of what you learned from that regret.
Okay, so first off, sometimes companies don't work out, right? And that's okay if you're a founder. It's okay if it doesn't work out. But like what you can do is you can actually write a nice sort of letter to your investors and at least let them know why it didn't work out. Because on the other side of this thing, you know, I've invested in over 1,500 companies, right? I'm like the faces of meth for angel investing, okay? And, you know, you learn something from every deal. Every deal has something that you can learn from, right? Hey, groceries in 30 seconds to your house is a lot harder than we thought, you know? So you just learn something as an investor with whatever it is. I've made some mistakes. I mean, straight up, I wrote a personal investment in BlockFi in their C round. I mean, you can boo it. It's fucking disgusting and terrible. And I'll just be real with you, like that was terrible, okay? That was terrible. And, you know, you're sitting on a really nice markup, okay? And you think that it's going a certain way, okay? And if you go from, say, $200 million to $5 billion, $5.5 billion, and that was a personal thing. That was a personal check from my own money at the time through another syndicate, right? That was terrible, okay? That was by far the worst investment I've ever made. Like that was, and that's what you get for shitcoining. That's what you get for shitcoining. I will pay for it the rest of my fucking life. I'll never live it down, and I'm sorry, and I'll never make that mistake again. It's terrible.
Repent.
Okay?
Repent. Max,
and then
from work.
And then it gets worse, right? Because the deal with FTX, so you're like, oh fuck, all right, well now I'm stuck with this FTX stock. Like fuck, maybe something happens with that, and then boom, it's like psych, kiddo, psych, block fire, you're done, it's over. So that's mine.
Max, please confess your regret.
Was it specifically about shitcoins or just lessons learned from companies?
You do not need to go down that path.
Okay.
You can choose any path you want.
Beautiful. Yeah, I'll share a couple of lessons. I mean, for me, the biggest lesson is over and over at the early stage where I'm investing, the kind of founders that I want to work with, all that matters is right people exploring big idea, period. But they need to be the right person, not just on one dimension, right? And sometimes I'm okay with doing this as a solo founder, but sometimes you need a team. You know, I've had some cases where maybe I wrote a check because I thought the person was truly technically brilliant, but maybe was not the right person to bring the product to market. And this is something I've been reminded of, and one of my biggest lessons is, you know, you need the right team exploring the right opportunity, but they need to have both technical genius and insight, but also someone on the team that's clearly going to be able to get this thing to market.
Surely you all must have questions. Let's turn it over to the audience. Man in the second row in the blue hat. Check.
Hey, just real quickly, could you just touch on the, kind of like the very first place that founders often go, the friends and family source of flow there for capital?
I'm sorry, where do founders go to raise? Friends and family. All right. The friends and family is great, but usually those are actually terrible deals. It's the founder doesn't have a lot of experience, right, valuing his company, and he goes to friends and family, right? And they call it friends, family, and fools, right? Because often only a fool would invest in their friends and family, especially at that early stage. But that's the most common round of funding to do, and you just get your friends together. You can accept their wires themselves and start building out your cap table. And there's all sorts of tools, right, that can help you do it. YC has a lot in their library. Funders Club, books like Venture Deals. A lot of these things can be automated. Even on AngelList, you can create a Delaware C. Like, they'll walk you through the process, right, with some basic cap table management and things like that, right, to put them on. But in all honesty, it can make for some awkward holiday gatherings with a friends and family around that doesn't go great.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I agree. It really depends on you as a founder need to know what it is you want to build, right? And so to Muzz's point, venture capital may or may not be the best way to do that. I'm not saying, by the way, everyone should play this game of, go huge or go home. Totally not. I mean, for most people, 99.9% of people, to play this game correctly, if you want to go for, the unicorn type outcome and really change the world, you need to be a little bit off. You are not a normal person. In fact, you're an obsessive. The founders I invest in are weird. They're obsessive, just like I am, right? This is like real recognize real is my hope. Like, we're all kind of weird and obsessive people, but you have to be willing to take that. Now, so, but for a lot of people, you may want to build a business that's maybe, something that's a much more sustainable business. And in that case, raising from friends and family and raising from, other sources of financing, even potentially getting a loan or whatever, could make a lot of sense. If you're going to play the game of we want to build something truly huge, truly change the world, if you're lucky enough to have friends and family that are willing to play that game, great, but I would make sure they know what they're doing. If this is their first angel check they've ever written, that's a scary thing.
Why would you want that as a founder, too? Why would you really want to go there first, right? I mean, that is tough. First off, it's probably not going to be a lot of money. I mean, I guess it depends on who your friends and family are, right? But usually, to take money in investment from, a relative, that's tough,
Great question.
I think to follow up on that, though, was the question not asking where do you go first? Is it friends and family? Okay.
Who's next? No more questions? Okay, got it.
Just going down the aisle of Church of Bitcoin. Here you are.
So first, great talk. I loved it. Laughed a lot. Second, what's the average check size that you normally write? Is there like a margin between depending, okay, is this an early stage company, I normally write a check of this size. If it's a little bit more advanced, I normally tend to write a bigger check. How does the amount vary between your analysis and what you eventually give away?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I have a range. Typically I'm writing $250K to $1 million checks. Typically, for my core positions, I'd like to own at least 5% of the company. A lot of the pre-seed deals I'll try and get even more, so it's a really core position for me. If I'm doing a later stage follow-on, however, like in some of these, if I'm doing investing in like Labs or River, where I didn't get to go so early, obviously I'm not going to be able to do anywhere near that, and I'm okay with that. And I just have to kind of dial myself to see what the opportunity is. Like Muzz said, typically if I'm writing a check and it's not a super later stage company that I just want to support, then I need to believe whatever the size of that check is can return the fund. So as an example, if I put in a $250,000 check into your company, I need to believe that I'm going to 100x at the outcome, whether that's through IPO or through acquisition, right? And so if I think I need to dial up the check size a little bit, or if I have extremely strong conviction in a few cases, then I'm willing to do that and take a bigger risk. But yeah, that's the rule of thumb.
So Max, as Chris pointed out a number of times, we don't have any money. So there's that element of our check size. Okay, but what's interesting though is
let's not facts get in the way of a good story.
So some people try to get to a certain ownership percentage, right? Like Max was saying, he likes to own a certain percent of the company, right? And everything that he's investing in, he's slugging, right, for the home runs, right? It's not a batting average, it's home runs per at bat, okay? But at the same time, I know him personally, and he thinks he's saving the world. All right, and with Bitcoin and helping Bitcoin companies and like doing what he does, right? And conversely, and we definitely get along. That's a compliment. But conversely, I'm not here. Like, we're not saving the manatees. You know what I mean? This is not kumbaya. Like, you have invested capital from other people, and you have a fiduciary responsibility to make them money, right? All while still saving the world, okay? But as far as our check size goes, we're not really concerned with the percent, mainly because we broke. And usually a lot of our investments come from people like yourselves, right, that are investing.
You're selling yourself short, though. So you run syndicates. What's the typical?
100 to 500,000 is where everything has landed so far for our deals, right? And we have our own NGU technology, okay? That number is going to go up.
I also just want to add on to that, although, yes, we're very mission-driven here. I think everyone in this room, right, and this is what I love about Bitcoiners, everyone in this room, you know, obviously, you could be doing a lot of things in life. You could have made a lot of money in shitcoins. You're not. You're here. You're principled. I love that. I also think that's fantastic business, though, because the people that I'm betting on, all of you in the audience, when FTX implodes and the price of Solana goes to nothing, are you leaving? No. None of us are leaving because we actually believe in what we're doing. So, to be very clear, you know, I think we're going to generate some freaking phenomenal returns for our investors while doing what we all believe in. So,
we have time for one final question. Gentleman in the, looks like a cowboy hat. Got lights in my face, can't tell for sure.
Thank you. I love how you said it's important to kind of think about the value of information. So in that aspect, do you guys explore different business revenue models that aligns with Lightning and Bitcoin, and or something along those lines that interest you guys?
I'm sorry, I didn't fully get that.
So I love how you said it's important to value the information, or the value of information. Do you explore different business revenue models, like shared revenue models, or that align with Lightning, how Lightning moves in Bitcoin as well, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So I'll take two parts in this. In the payments companies, so let's go infrastructure, payments, the new applications. Infrastructure companies, probably going to be SaaS, probably great traditional businesses. Payments companies, probably going to take a cut, provide other financial services on top, not reinventing the wheel, probably going to be great businesses. As you get to this new application layer, no one knows exactly what the business model is going to look like, and that's what's so exciting. This is the area that I love to play in, right? And so to be clear, you know, in something like Fountain or Stacker News, the actual tipping of someone is interesting to me. But what's much more interesting is now, forget the actual money itself, forget making money on that, it's the signal, right, that says this piece of information is valuable. Now imagine in the future, you know, especially I'm also very obsessed with machine learning and AI. I've been doing a lot of like dinners now with my friends that are both in Lightning and ML land. And if there's anyone out there in the audience that's interested in the intersection of machine learning and Lightning Network, please come talk to me. That's my obsession. All right, cool. And so I think that imagine the future, instead of something, you know, like Google or whatever, or, you know, Spotify, you're able to say, hey Siri, or hey whoever, I want, you know, the best podcast in the world about this thing. Or I have a question. What is, you know, like, what is the best way for me to, I don't know, like travel from here to New York City under these constraints? And now you can surface that information much better than I think Google can today, as an example, right? And so where exactly does that get monetized? I mean, that's still TBD, but if you create that level of value, I think there's going to be a lot of capture as well.
So that was pretty much good. I'm not sure really what I can add to that, other than a lot of these type of companies. It's not only the paying, right, and the tipping, and like things like Starbacker, they're here, you know, and if it costs money to upload everything on a site, you know, you probably do get better information. But it's the other way when you want to like maybe kill your spam, okay? A company like Vita, all right, to stop DMs, stop, you know, text messages. Like if somebody's not in your phone and you don't know them, okay, if it costs even a small amount of 15 cents to receive a text message, that eliminates like a crazy amount of spam. Okay, just doing things like that. Imagine your LinkedIn box, if it cost, sats every time, or if somebody wants to try and sell you something terrible, they have to book it on a Lightning streaming calendar, right? And you're actually getting paid for all these sort of things, right? So that's a little bit of a different revenue model that's pretty interesting. Is the streaming and the creator tools, and basically just killing your spam and just monetizing your attention.
Cool. All good things come to an end. We have 29 seconds left. Either of you have a parting thought of inspiration for the audience?
Think big. I mean, sometimes, we only get one life to live, and if you have a crazy idea, there's never been a more exciting time to be a human being alive. We are at the verge of 2 revolutions happening at once, 3 if you count energy, machine learning, and Bitcoin, and yeah, go for it, whatever it is.
Well, the verdict's still out. We don't know if it's just one life. We're going to have to see about that. We may get more than one life. But I would just start somewhere. I would just get started with investing. I would, if that's what you're looking to, just write small checks and then be impactful. Help these companies, cheer them on. And if you're a founder, don't leave your investors in the dark. They're on your team. Okay, send investor updates frequently. Okay, they are there for you. The worst thing that you can do is go in a hole and hide if there's a little bit of trouble, right? Leverage the people who've invested in your companies. They're not working for you, but they're working with you, and a lot of founders don't do that.
Great chat. Let's give these gentlemen a round of applause.
Truth.
That was excellent. Really good job, guys. I learned a huge amount. Can I shake your hand? Smashing panel. I learned a huge amount about how to invest in Lightning Network companies. We just need to get Matt Odell to start tweeting, "Stay humble, invest in Lightning Network companies." I think it could catch on. Some repentance in the church of Bitcoin there, with the Holy Trinity being energy, machine learning, and Bitcoin. Are we ready for the next talk, Noor? Yeah? Yeah? Okay, brilliant. Come on down. Noor, who's been wonderful the past 2 days, our host, she's been great at looking after us. Take it away.
All right. I just wanted to give a few thank you to all the speakers that came from all over the world to make this event happen. I don't think this would have been as amazing as it has been for the last 2 days. Also the sponsors, obviously Galloy and Bitfinex, you've seen them everywhere. And all the other sponsors that decided to step up and make this event happen. So, and obviously all of you guys who came from everywhere and showed really good energy and made this last 2 days really great. Just a reminder that tomorrow we'll be heading to El Zonte at 9 a.m. There'll be buses leaving every 10 minutes. This will be probably one of the best experiences in El Salvador, one of your best experiences in El Salvador, because it's a small town. This is where all of this journey started, really. Just make sure to spend your sats there and meet the people there and talk to them and make them feel, the good energy of Bitcoiners. Last but not least, I'm really, really excited to let you guys know that tickets for next year's event are already on sale on the website adoptingbitcoin.org. So if you want to join us again next year, we'll be hosting this event here again on November 7 to 9. So I hope to see you all again next year. All right, I hope to see you all in the courtyard. There'll be a happy hour in about 10 minutes. Yeah, enjoy the night, guys. Thank you all.